Hello everyone, I am very glad that you're joining this story. Subscribe, like and comment. Enjoy the story, smile more often.
My wife scratched a lottery ticket and won $11 million. I was thrilled for her until she filed for divorce the next day and threw me out of the house like I was garbage. She told me she owed me nothing, that this money was hers alone. But what she forgot was the prenup her own parents had forced me to sign before we got married. A prenup that, thanks to a single overlooked clause, was about to make her life a nightmare. I still remember the moment Emily scratched that ticket. The way her fingers trembled as she uncovered each number, her eyes darting between the card and the prize list on the back. At first, she didn't believe it. Neither did I. There's no way, she muttered, squinting at the tiny print like she had misread it. But she hadn't. She had just won $11 million. And within seconds, our quiet Tuesday afternoon turned into a scene out of a movie. We screamed. We laughed. She grabbed my shoulders, shaking me, her eyes wide with excitement. David, oh my God, what do we even do now? I was just as shocked as she was, but in that moment, all I felt was pure happiness for her. We had always been comfortable, but this was something else. This was life-changing money. A new house, no more bills, endless possibilities. I imagined vacations, retirement, maybe even starting a family now that financial worries wouldn't be an issue. She called the lottery office immediately, verifying the win, and they told her she needed to come in the next morning to claim the prize. That night, we lay in bed talking about everything we could do. I told her we should be smart, invest, donate, make sure we set up accounts properly. She agreed, still giddy, but she was also more detached than I expected. I figured she was just overwhelmed. I mean, who wouldn't be? Neither of us had ever dealt with that kind of money before. But looking back, that was the first red flag. I just didn't see it. The next day, I kissed her goodbye before work, told her I was proud of her, and reminded her to call me after the appointment. She nodded, gave me a small smile, and watched me leave. That was the last normal moment I would have with my wife. I got home that evening, expecting to celebrate. Instead, the house was eerily quiet. I stepped inside, dropping my bag by the door when I noticed something was off. The pictures of us on the entryway table? Gone. The coat rack where Emily always left her purse? Empty. My chest tightened as I turned the corner and saw her suitcases stacked by the door. Emily stood next to them, arms crossed, wearing an expression I had never seen before. Cold, smug, like she had already moved on. And on the kitchen counter, staring me right in the face, was a crisp, white envelope with the words divorce papers printed across the top. My mouth went dry. Well, what is this? She exhaled like she was dealing with a child. David, let's not drag this out. I'm leaving you. My brain refused to process what I was hearing. Less than 24 hours ago, we were planning a future together. Wait, hold on. I let out a hollow laugh. Emily, what the hell are you talking about? We just won the lottery. She had won the lottery. Her eyes seemed to say, not we, her. She tilted her head, almost like she pitied me. I deserve a fresh start, she said simply, like it was the most reasonable thing in the world. And I don't need you weighing me down. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. This wasn't real. It couldn't be. You're joking, I whispered, right? She didn't even flinch. I've already filed the paperwork. And don't worry, I've made arrangements for you to leave peacefully. It wasn't until I saw the two massive security guards step into view from the hallway that I realized just how deep this betrayal ran. My own wife had hired security to kick me out of my own home. Emily, I breathed, barely holding back the rage and disbelief bubbling up inside me. You're actually serious. Her lips curled into a condescending smile. 100% serious. I looked at the guards, both standing there with their arms crossed, waiting for me to leave like I was some intruder. My own home, the place I had worked my ass off to afford, and now I was nothing to her. You're making a mistake, I said, my voice low. Emily's smile widened, but there was nothing kind about it. No, David, she said sweetly. I'm finally doing what's best for me. I wanted to fight. I wanted to scream at her, to demand an explanation, but I knew it wouldn't change anything. The woman standing in front of me wasn't my wife anymore. She was someone else entirely. So I did the only thing I could. I walked out. I stepped onto the porch, my hands clenched into fists as the guards closed the door behind me. That was it. 7 years of marriage, gone in an instant. I stood there, staring at the front door, feeling the weight of absolute nothingness. I had no home, no clothes except the ones on my back. No explanation, nothing. And just when I thought Emily couldn't sink any lower, she opened the door one last time, looked me right in the eye, and said the words that would haunt me for the rest of my life. "This money is mine. You don't get a single cent." Then, without another word, she shut the door. And that's when I realized this wasn't over. The first night after Emily threw me out, I sat in my car, parked in an empty lot, staring at my reflection in the rearview mirror. The silence around me felt heavier than anything I had ever experienced. Just 24 hours ago, I had a wife, a home, and what I thought was a future filled with possibilities. Now, I was homeless, humiliated, and blindsided by the woman I had loved for 7 years. I kept replaying it in my head, the way she stood there, so smug, while security shoved me out of my own home. The way she told me to my face that I wasn't getting a single cent. It was like she had been planning this for months, just waiting for the right moment to pull the trigger. But what I couldn't understand, what ate at me, was how she flipped so fast. Had she always been this way? Had I just been too blind to see it? My phone buzzed with a notification. A message from my best friend, Eric. "Man, I still can't believe she did that. You okay?" No, I wasn't. I started typing a response, but my phone battery was already in the red. Great. I reached over to my glove compartment, digging through the mess of receipts, napkins, and random junk I had tossed in there over the years, searching for my charger. My fingers brushed against something thick, a stack of papers. I pulled them out, frowning. In the dim glow of the streetlight outside, I saw the bold letters at the top. Prenuptial agreement. My breath hitched. I had completely forgotten about the prenup. 7 years ago, when Emily and I got engaged, her parents had practically dragged me into their lawyer's office and forced me to sign a prenuptial agreement. At the time, I was just some average guy with student loans and a mid-level job, while Emily came from serious money. Her parents were convinced I was a gold digger, despite the fact that I had never asked Emily for a single dime. I remember the conversation like it was yesterday. Emily's mother had sat across from me, tapping her manicured nails on the desk. "David, dear, this is just a precaution. You understand, don't you?" I had looked at Emily, hoping for some kind of support, but she just squeezed my hand and said, "It's just paperwork, babe. It doesn't change anything between us." I was young, naive. I didn't care about money. I just wanted to be with her. So I signed the papers without even reading them. And now, that piece of paper was the only thing keeping me from being completely screwed. I shuffled through the pages, scanning line after line, looking for anything I could use. Then there was Clause 17b. In the event of a divorce, any income, windfalls, or financial gains earned during the marriage must be split evenly between both parties. My heart started pounding. Emily's lottery win counted. She thought she was walking away with $11 million, but legally, half of it was mine. The very prenup her parents had insisted on to protect her had just become my biggest weapon. I sat back in my seat, gripping the papers so tightly my knuckles turned white. I could barely believe it. She had planned everything so carefully, made sure I was out on the street with nothing. But she had forgotten the one thing that mattered most. I could practically hear her voice in my head. "This money is mine. You don't get a single cent." "Oh, Emily, we'll see about that." I pulled out my phone and, with a new sense of purpose, dialed the number of the best divorce attorney I could find. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The next morning, I walked into the law office with a mix of rage and pure determination. I hadn't slept much, replaying Emily's smug face over and over in my head, the way she had tossed me aside like I was nothing. But now I had ammunition, and I was about to use it. The receptionist glanced up as I walked in. "Do you have an appointment?" "I need to see a divorce attorney," I said, urgently. She gave me a polite smile. "We have several specialists available." "What exactly are you?" I pulled out the prenup and slapped it onto the counter. "My wife won an $11 million lottery jackpot and tried to kick me out with nothing," I said. "But this prenup says I get half." Her eyebrows shot up. That got her attention. "One moment, sir," she said, already dialing an extension. 10 minutes later, I was sitting across from Michael Hayes, a seasoned divorce attorney with the kind of sharp eyes that told me he had seen it all, and won it all. He flipped through the prenup, his expression unreadable, then stopped when he got to Clause 17b. His lips curled into a smirk. Well, he murmured. "Looks like your wife made a very expensive mistake." I leaned forward. "So it's solid? She can't get out of it?" "Oh, it's solid," he confirmed. "Your wife's own parents had this drafted. Courts tend to take their side when prenups are disputed, but this clause? It's ironclad. Any financial windfall during the marriage is considered marital property." Meaning, he set the papers down, looking at me with amusement. "You are legally entitled to 50% of her lottery winnings." A wave of satisfaction rushed through me. Emily had thought she was so clever. She had blindsided me, thrown me out like trash, convinced she had all the power. But she had played herself. How fast can we move on this? I asked. Michael grinned. Let's ruin her week. Within 48 hours, Emily was served with divorce papers. Not just any papers, a legal demand for $5.5 million. I could only imagine the moment she received them. Probably sitting in the luxury apartment she had rented with her newfound wealth, sipping champagne, basking in her freedom, right up until reality slapped her in the face. She didn't call me. She didn't text. But I got confirmation that she had been served, and that was enough. I waited. And then the explosion came. The call came in at exactly 9:37 p.m. I let it ring twice before answering, keeping my voice calm. Hello? Are you out of your damn mind? Emily shrieked. I smirked. Nice to hear from you too, Em. You think you could just take my money? She spat, her voice nearly cracking. I leaned back in my seat, savoring every second. I don't think, Emily. I know. You don't deserve a cent. She snapped. You didn't win. You didn't buy the ticket. This is mine. I chuckled. Yeah, you might want to reread the prenup your parents forced me to sign. Because according to that, I get half. Silence. Not the stunned kind, the panicked kind. I could hear her breathing heavily, processing the fact that she had royally screwed herself. This is a joke, she finally muttered, but her confidence was shaken. There's no way this holds up in court. By all means, I said, try to fight it, but my lawyer seems pretty confident. And the judge isn't going to have much sympathy for someone who won $11 million and tried to leave her husband with nothing. Another pause. Then, she snapped, you're a pathetic loser. And you're about to be $5.5 million poorer. The line went dead. I stared at my phone, a slow grin spreading across my face. She thought she had played me. But the real game had just begun. The moment Emily got served, the meltdown began. I wasn't there to witness it firsthand, but word spread fast. Mutual friends, old coworkers, even people who barely knew us started blowing up my phone with updates. She lost it, man. Eric texted me that afternoon. Like full-on screaming, throwing things, absolute meltdown. I smirked as I read the messages, picturing the exact moment she opened that envelope and saw my legal demand for $5.5 million. Up until that moment, she had been riding high, thinking she had won. That she had dumped me with nothing but the clothes on my back while she sailed into a life of luxury. But reality had just slapped her in the face. And from what I was hearing, she did not handle it well. Apparently, the second she saw the paperwork, she started screaming at the process server like it was his fault. This is a mistake, right? She had demanded, flipping through the pages, her face going pale. He can't do this. The poor guy just shrugged. It's all legal, ma'am. Have a good day. That's when she completely snapped. According to one of her so-called friends, she stormed into her lawyer's office less than an hour later, flinging the papers onto his desk and demanding answers. You said I didn't owe him a damn thing. She shrieked, pacing back and forth while her lawyer tried to get a word in. He didn't win the money. I did. He has no right to it. Her lawyer, apparently, was way calmer than she was. Emily, he said, voice even. You signed a legally binding agreement. He's entitled to half of any financial windfalls earned during the marriage. This is exactly that. She refused to accept it. That can't be right. She spat, her face going red. It's my money. The lawyer just sighed. Emily, this prenup was drafted by your own parents' attorney. There's no getting around it. And that's when she absolutely lost it. She called me that night, her name flashing across my screen in big, angry red letters. I took my time before answering, letting it ring twice, then picked up with the calmest voice I could manage. Hello? You think you could take my money? She screeched. I held the phone away from my ear, grinning. There it was, the tantrum I'd been waiting for. It's not your money, I corrected, keeping my tone even. It's our money, and legally, half of it is mine. You manipulative, greedy, pathetic little. She went off, spewing every insult she could think of, her voice shaking with rage. I let her go on for a full 30 seconds before I interrupted, my voice completely level. Emily, I said slowly, tell me something. Did I write the prenup? She went silent. I pressed forward. Did I force you to sign it? More silence. I leaned back against the couch, letting it sink in. This was your agreement, I reminded her. Your own parents' lawyer wrote it. You were the one who made me sign it before we got married. That's different. She snapped, but her voice wavered. How? I asked, genuinely curious. She had no answer. You didn't think this through, did you? I chuckled. You spent all this time plotting how to get rid of me, but you forgot the one thing that actually mattered. You tricked me, she hissed. I laughed out loud at that. Tricked you? Emily, I didn't even remember the damn prenup until 2 nights ago. But you know what? I'm really, really glad your parents made me sign it. Because now, it's paying me $5.5 million. She screamed in frustration, and then click. She hung up on me. I stared at my phone, grinning ear to ear. She thought she had won. She thought she had destroyed me. But now she knew the truth. This wasn't over. This was just the beginning. I knew Emily wouldn't go down without a fight. She had spent years getting her way, manipulating situations to benefit herself. There was no way she would just hand over my share of the winnings without making it as difficult as possible. And right on cue, she started pulling every dirty trick in the book. It started small, delays, excuses, avoiding legal meetings. Her lawyer claimed she was reviewing her options, but we all knew the truth. She was buying time. Then, she started moving money around. Within days, millions of dollars mysteriously vanished from her accounts. She gifted loans to her closest friends, transferred funds into offshore accounts, and even purchased a brand new sports car, probably hoping to claim she had already spent the money and that there was nothing left to take. But my lawyer? He was 10 steps ahead. The moment we caught wind of her little financial games, he filed an emergency financial injunction against her. This meant that every single dollar in her accounts was frozen until the court decided how to distribute the assets. She couldn't touch a cent. The second that ruling came down, Emily panicked. I found out later from a mutual friend that she completely lost it when she got the news. Apparently, she had been in the middle of planning a luxury vacation to Europe when her credit cards suddenly stopped working. She called the bank, only to be told that her assets had been locked by court order. Her reaction? Full meltdown. She stormed into her lawyer's office, red-faced and shaking, demanding answers. "You said I had time to move the money," she screamed. "How the hell did he pull this off so fast?" Her lawyer sighed, rubbing his temples. "Because, Emily, he has a better attorney than you do." That was the moment she realized she was losing. The next day, my phone rang. It was her. I let it go to voicemail. I already knew what this was, her trying to negotiate, trying to find a way to worm her way out of giving me what I was rightfully owed. And sure enough, when I finally listened to the message, her tone was completely different. "David, can we just be adults about this?" She cooed. "There's no need to drag this through the courts. It's a waste of time and money. Let's just settle things quietly, okay?" I laughed out loud. She had humiliated me, thrown me out with nothing, and now she wanted to play nice? I called her back, fully prepared for the performance of a lifetime. "Emily," I said, my voice dripping with amusement. "I was so surprised to hear from you. Thought you wanted nothing to do with me?" There was a long pause. "Look," she finally sighed. I might have overreacted. Okay, but we don't have to make this ugly. How about I offer you, say, $200,000? Clean break, no drama." I nearly choked on my drink. 200,000? I repeated slowly. "That's a lot of money," she said sweetly. "You could start over, buy yourself a nice little place. No need for this to go any further." I actually burst out laughing. "Emily, I'm legally entitled to $5.5 million. And you think I'm going to take a $200,000 pity check?" Her voice turned ice cold. "You greedy piece of—" I cut her off. "See you in court, Emily." And then I hung up. That was the moment I knew I had her. She wasn't in control anymore. She had tried to cheat me, manipulate me, and bury me. But now, she was the one scrambling. The courtroom was packed the day of the final hearing. Emily sat across from me, wearing a designer suit and a forced expression of confidence, but I could see the cracks. She wasn't as smug as she had been when she first kicked me out. She was nervous, and she should have been. For months, she had fought tooth and nail to keep me from getting my rightful share of the winnings. Her legal team had thrown everything at the wall. Claims that the prenup was unfair, that I had manipulated her into the marriage, that since she had purchased the ticket herself, the money was hers alone. They even tried to argue that I was only pursuing this out of spite. But the judge? He wasn't buying any of it. Emily's lawyer stood up first, pacing the room dramatically like this was some high-stakes Hollywood trial. "Your Honor, this case is about fairness," he began. "My client worked hard her whole life, and this lottery win was her stroke of luck. It is completely unfair to suggest that her husband, who contributed nothing to the ticket purchase, should benefit from her good fortune." The judge raised an eyebrow. "You do realize they were married when she won, correct?" Her lawyer hesitated. "Well, yes, but—" "And that this prenup, which was drafted by her own family's attorney, specifically states that all financial windfalls must be shared?" A muscle in Emily's jaw twitched. "Yes, Your Honor, but—" The judge cut him off. "Then I fail to see how this argument holds any weight. The agreement is crystal clear. Moving on. Emily's face blanched as my lawyer stood up. Michael, who had been waiting for this moment like a shark circling its prey, smiled as he spoke. Your Honor, my client is not only legally entitled to half of this money, but we have evidence that Mrs. Carter attempted to hide assets during this trial in order to avoid paying him. Bank statements, offshore transfers, large gifts to friends. Should I go on? The judge's expression darkened. Emily shifted in her seat. Mrs. Carter, the judge said, voice firm. Did you attempt to hide assets? Her lawyer started to stammer something, but Emily, finally realizing how deep she had dug herself in, blurted out, I was just trying to protect what was mine. The room fell silent. The judge sighed, shaking his head. That was a very poor choice, Mrs. Carter. The final ruling was better than I could have ever imagined. Emily wasn't just ordered to pay me $5.5 million. She had to cover all of my legal fees, too. All those months she spent dragging this case out, paying an expensive legal team to find loopholes. She screwed herself. When the judge read the decision aloud, I could see the exact moment Emily realized she had lost everything. Her face went pale, her fingers curled into fists, and when we all stood to leave, she looked like she was going to be sick. I walked past her as I exited, pausing just long enough to lean in and whisper, It's not your money, Emily. It's ours. Legally. She glared at me like she wanted to throw a chair, but she said nothing, because, for the first time in this entire battle, she had nothing left to say. The first thing I bought with my $5.5 million wasn't a fancy car or a dream vacation. It was Emily's house, the same house she had thrown me out of. The moment I found out it was up for sale, I knew what I had to do. After losing in court, Emily had burned through her remaining cash at an alarming rate. She had lived her whole life without financial discipline, and suddenly coming into millions had only made it worse. Her first mistake? Thinking the money would last forever. Between her legal fees, the ridiculous spending sprees, and the fact that she could no longer access the offshore account she had so cleverly hidden, she was bleeding money. It didn't take long before the mortgage payments became too much. The house, my house, went on the market, and the second I saw the listing, I placed the highest bid. It wasn't even a contest. The house was mine again, and the best part? Emily had no idea. I waited until moving day to make my grand entrance. The sale had been finalized, the paperwork signed. All that was left was for Emily to get her pathetic, greedy ass out of my home. I pulled her to the driveway, just as she was loading the last of her things into a moving truck. She was dressed in a worn-out designer coat, her hair pulled into a messy ponytail, a far cry from the smug, polished woman who had thrown me out just months ago. She glanced up as my car pulled in. Her eyes met mine in the rearview mirror, and the second she saw me step out, her entire body went rigid. I leaned casually against the car, arms crossed, watching as the realization slowly dawned on her. She blinked, looking between me and the house, like she had just stepped into some kind of nightmare. You're kidding, she finally said, voice shaky. I grinned. Nope. Her jaw clenched. This is a joke, right? No joke, I said, pulling the keys out of my pocket and dangling them in front of her. Bought it last week. Just finished the paperwork. Guess that means you're all moved out, huh? The way her face twisted in pure rage and disbelief was something I would cherish for the rest of my life. You did this to spite me, she hissed. I shrugged. Nah, just wanted my house back. She gritted her teeth. It was never yours. Funny, I said, jingling the keys. Because I'm the one who's moving in, and you're the one who's moving out. Her hands balled into fists. For a second, I genuinely thought she might throw something at me. But then, something even better happened. She turned bright red, let out a frustrated scream, and stomped toward her car like a petulant child. I laughed, watching her slam the door shut, grip the steering wheel way too tight, and gun the engine as she sped off, leaving a trail of dust behind her. I exhaled, soaking in the moment. I had walked out of this house with nothing but my car keys and the clothes on my back. Now, I was back, and this time, I owned every last inch of it. Emily's downfall wasn't just satisfying, it was poetic justice. For months, I had been watching from a distance as she spiraled. The same woman who once looked at me with pure arrogance as she kicked me out of my own home was now broke, humiliated, and forced to move back in with her parents. The irony was so perfect that if I had seen it in a movie, I would have called it unrealistic. She had $11 million, and in less than a year, she had lost everything. It wasn't just the court ruling that destroyed her. That was only the beginning. The real damage? She did it to herself. Emily had always been obsessed with status. She thrived on being the woman who had it all. The luxury lifestyle, the designer wardrobe, the expensive cars. The moment she got her hands on that jackpot, she went on a spending spree from hell. She didn't just buy a new life. She burned through money like it was a competition. A penthouse apartment in the city, custom-made jewelry, first-class flights to Paris, Dubai, Milan, expensive gifts for her new friends, people who only stuck around because she had money to blow. And now, those same friends were nowhere to be found. The second the money dried up, they vanished. Her real breaking point came after she lost the house. She had been trying to stay afloat, desperate to keep up appearances. But when she couldn't make her mortgage payments, reality hit her hard. That house was the last piece of her fantasy life. And when I bought it out from under her, she had nothing left. Eric was the one who witnessed the final blow. Dude, he told me over the phone, barely containing his laughter. She looked like she was going to pass out when she saw you moving in. I've never seen someone turn so red in my life. I smirked. She thought she was invincible. Turns out, she was just stupid. Eric chuckled. Oh, and guess where she's living now? I leaned forward. No way. Tell me. He cracked up, back with her parents. I let out a full laugh, shaking my head. You're joking. Nope, he said. Word is, she's completely miserable. I could picture it so clearly. Emily, once so smug and confident, now stuck in her childhood bedroom, forced to face reality. The same parents who had forced me to sign the prenup, the ones who had treated me like I was beneath them, now had their spoiled, broke daughter back under their roof. The irony was delicious. And then it happened. A text from Emily. David, can we talk? I stared at my screen, and for a second, actually laughed out loud. I didn't even need to open the message to know exactly what she was trying to do. She wasn't reaching out because she missed me. She wasn't reaching out because she had suddenly become a better person. She was reaching out because she needed something. She was desperate. I could already hear the fake sincerity in her voice. She would play the victim, try to convince me that she had changed, maybe even suggest that we should try again. Not a damn chance. I didn't even bother responding. Instead, I blocked her number, let her sit in the mess she made. Winning in court was one thing. Moving on was another. For the first time in years, I didn't have to worry about Emily, didn't have to deal with her constant manipulation, her smug entitlement, her selfishness. My life was mine again, and with $5.5 million in my bank account, I was free to do whatever the hell I wanted. So I did. The first thing I did was take a trip. Not just any trip, a 6-month world tour. I booked first-class flights to places I had only ever seen in movies. Paris, Tokyo, Sydney, Santorini. I hiked mountains, ate at the best restaurants, actually lived. And for the first time in years, I wasn't looking over my shoulder, waiting for someone to ruin it. There were no fights, no drama, no one trying to control me, drain me, or treat me like an accessory in their life. It was just me, and it felt damn good. By the time I got back, I knew exactly what I wanted to do next. I had worked a boring corporate job for years, grinding away to build a future that, in the end, Emily tried to take from me. But now, I had the money and freedom to do things on my terms. So, I took a leap. I started my own business. It wasn't about getting rich. I already had enough money to live comfortably for years. It was about building something that was mine, something no one could take away from me again. And you know what? It worked. Within a year, my business was thriving. I had a great team, good people around me, and a life that was better than anything I ever had with Emily. No more walking on eggshells. No more worrying about someone else's greed. Just success and peace. Emily, on the other hand, she was miserable. I hadn't seen her since the day she drove off, humiliated after watching me move in her old house. But every now and then, I'd hear things through mutual friends. She wasn't working. She had never worked a day in her life. She was still living with her parents. And from what I heard, that arrangement was not going well. She had gone from being a woman who thought she was too good for everyone to a woman who had nothing. And then one night it happened. She reached out. A voicemail. Her voice was small, weak. Nothing like the arrogant, condescending woman I had known for years. David, maybe we could talk? I stared at my phone. For a split second, I almost felt bad for her. Almost. Then I thought about everything she had done. How she had laughed in my face as she took everything from me, never once thinking she'd lose. And now she was nothing. I didn't listen to the rest of the message. I didn't call her back. I just deleted it. And I never looked back. Revenge isn't always about getting even. Sometimes the best revenge is just living better. And that's exactly what I did. Emily thought she had won when she threw me out of my own house. She thought she was walking away with an $11 million fortune, leaving me with nothing. But in the end, She lost everything, not just the money, her reputation, her dignity, her entire future. And me? I walked away richer, happier, and completely free. By now, everyone knew what had happened. Mutual friends, old acquaintances, even people who barely knew us heard about how Emily hit the jackpot and ruined her own life. It became one of those stories people whispered about with equal parts shock and amusement. You hear about Emily? Someone would say over drinks. She won millions and still managed to end up broke and miserable. The way people talked about her now was so different from before. Emily had spent years playing the role of the perfect wife, the sophisticated, put-together woman who had her life in order. She had fooled so many people into thinking she was above everyone else. But now, she was just a cautionary tale. She wasn't special anymore. She wasn't powerful. She was just another greedy person who burned herself to the ground. One night, months after I had fully rebuilt my life, I ran into someone unexpected. I was at a charity gala, something I never would have attended back when I was married to Emily because she would have made the whole night about her. But now I actually enjoyed these things. I had made real friends, people who weren't just using me, who actually respected me. And then I saw her. Emily. She wasn't dressed in designer clothes anymore. She wasn't surrounded by people hanging on to her every word. She was alone. She must have recognized me at the same time because her eyes widened in shock. I could see so many emotions flicker across her face. Surprise, regret, maybe even a little hope. And for a second, I wondered if she would actually try to come over. Maybe she thought I would pity her. Maybe she thought I had forgotten everything. Maybe, just maybe, she still believed she had some kind of power over me. She took a hesitant step forward. And that's when I smiled. Not a forced, bitter smile. Not one full of anger or resentment. Just a simple, genuine smile. Because I had moved on. Because I had won. Emily stopped in her tracks. She must have realized in that exact moment that I wasn't the same person she had left behind. I wasn't the man she had once manipulated. I wasn't the man she had laughed at when she stole my home. I wasn't the man she thought she had destroyed. I was better, stronger, happier. She looked away. And then she left. Didn't say a word. Didn't try to talk to me. She just disappeared, slipping out of the room like a ghost from a life I had long since buried. And that's when I knew I had truly won. Because the best revenge? It wasn't the money. It wasn't even the house. It was knowing that Emily had thrown away everything for greed. And in the end, I was the one who walked away with everything that truly mattered.